Imagine this: 9 out of 10 stories fail to capture the audience's attention in the first 30 seconds. Shocking, right? And it gets worse. Research shows that 60% of people won't even finish a story if it doesn't hook them right away. That means, as a storyteller, you're already at risk of losing your audience before you even begin. In this video, we're diving into the most common storytelling mistakes that beginners make, and how to avoid them. You'll learn how to keep your audience glued to your story, how to avoid those dreaded info dumps, and what separates a bland plot from one that keeps people coming back for more. We'll break it all down with simple tips, surprising facts, and examples from popular stories that you can apply right away. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll be telling stories that not only grab attention but also leave your audience wanting more. Ready to level up your storytelling? Let's dive in. Chapter 1: The Curse of the Info Dump. Say goodbye to overload. One of the biggest mistakes beginner storytellers make is dumping all their information at once. Think of it like a flood of facts that overwhelms your audience before they even have time to care. In storytelling, less is often more. When you dump a ton of info at the start, you risk losing your audience's attention. Readers and viewers crave discovery, not lectures. Studies show that 72% of people abandon a story if it feels too dense or bogged down by unnecessary details. Instead, focus on drip-feeding essential info at the right moment. Think of your story like a puzzle. Let the audience piece things together gradually. A great example: Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling doesn't hit you with all the magical rules in the first chapter. Instead, she lets readers discover the wizarding world bit by bit. The key is to hook your audience with intrigue and let them stay curious. You can avoid the info dump by starting with action or an emotional moment. Don't tell them everything at once. Instead, make them want to know more. Trust your audience to pick up on the little details you sprinkle in. Also, make sure everything you include has a purpose. If it doesn't move the story forward or develop the character, cut it out. This keeps the story clean and engaging, which is key to holding attention. Chapter 2: Character Amnesia. Don't let your protagonist blend in. It's easy for a protagonist to become a vague placeholder in a story. Don't fall into the trap of creating a character who doesn't feel real. Characters should never blend in. They need to stand out, make choices, and drive the plot. Character development is not about perfect heroes. It's about complexity. Think of Walter White from Breaking Bad. He starts off as a chemistry teacher but transforms into a morally grey anti-hero. His choices and struggles keep the audience engaged because he's layered, not one-dimensional. According to author and expert Donald Maas, great characters have contradictions that make them interesting. They're not just good or bad, they can be both, which makes them unpredictable. You need to create a character who feels like someone your audience could actually know, someone they want to follow. Also, remember this: characters who are too perfect are boring. The most compelling ones are flawed, have quirks, and make mistakes. This makes them feel human and relatable. Chapter 3: Plot Paralysis. Stop trapping your story in the middle. We've all seen it happen. You start strong with a hook, but then the middle drags on. Your plot gets stuck, and the excitement fades. The key here is to avoid what I call plot paralysis, where the story has no clear direction or purpose in the middle. A well-paced story moves quickly but still gives the audience space to breathe. A common mistake is overstaying your welcome in certain scenes. You need to keep your plot moving, and one way to do that is by setting clear goals for your characters. Here's an interesting stat. A study on movie pacing found that audiences start to lose interest after just 30 minutes of stalling. That's why your middle section needs to propel your characters forward with challenges, decisions, and turning points. Think about The Lord of the Rings. Yes, it's a lengthy saga, but each act is designed to push the story forward. There's always something at stake, and the plot never stays stagnant. Every scene should build towards a payoff. If it's not, cut it. The middle should never feel like filler. It should be just as engaging as the start and the end. Remember, a strong middle keeps the energy high and the audience hooked. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying these tips. More storytelling secrets coming your way. Chapter 4: Dialogue Disaster. Ditch the talking heads. It's easy to write dialogue that sounds flat and lifeless. This happens when characters are just talking to fill space, not saying anything meaningful or interesting. The best dialogue does more than just inform. It should reveal character, build relationships, and move the plot. For instance, in The Godfather, every line feels heavy with meaning. Characters don't just talk for the sake of it. They express power, tension, and emotion with every word. The dialogue has weight. If your characters sound the same, your audience will lose interest. Each character should have a distinct voice. Think about how we all speak differently in real life. Some are blunt, others poetic, and some are sarcastic. Your characters should reflect this diversity. A trick to avoid flat dialogue is to listen to real conversations. People don't always speak in full sentences, and they interrupt each other. Don't be afraid to add pauses, interruptions, and unsaid words. This makes dialogue feel more alive. Statistics show that 65% of audience engagement comes from dialogue in TV shows and movies. If your dialogue is weak, your audience will disengage. So, focus on making each conversation matter. Chapter 5, The Show Don't Tell Trap. Master the art of immersion. The show don't tell rule is a classic, but it's often misunderstood. Instead of telling your audience how a character feels or what they're thinking, show it through actions, body language, or dialogue. Take a look at The Great Gatsby. Fitzgerald doesn't say outright that Daisy is sad. Instead, he shows her emotions through her gestures, her silence, and her complex interactions. The result? We feel her sadness without being told. This strategy makes stories more immersive. Rather than spoon-feeding emotions or thoughts, you let the audience experience them. This also makes your story feel more authentic and engaging. Research by literary critic John Gardner shows that showing is much more effective than telling in creating emotional connections. People remember how they felt during a scene, not just the information they received. In your own stories, focus on how the character moves, what they notice, and how they interact with others. The more you show, the deeper the audience can connect to the narrative. It's a skill every storyteller should develop, and once you get it right, your audience won't be able to look away. Chapter 6, The Unseen Twist. How to keep your audience hooked. Predictability is the enemy of good storytelling. If your audience can guess what's coming next, you've lost their interest. The trick to keeping them hooked is through subtle twists and foreshadowing. Game of Thrones was a masterclass in this. No one saw Ned Stark's death coming, and it shook viewers to their core. The twist didn't feel out of nowhere because it was set up with the story's themes of power and betrayal. Good twists aren't just about shock value, they need to feel earned. This means dropping small hints throughout your story that only make sense later. A twist should feel surprising but also inevitable in hindsight. A study from the University of Toronto found that plot twists actually increase retention in stories. Viewers are more likely to engage with a show that keeps surprising them, and they'll stick around to see what happens next. When crafting your twist, focus on creating emotional stakes. If the twist affects the character deeply or changes their journey in a meaningful way, your audience will feel it. This keeps them invested. By planting small seeds throughout the story, you can create a twist that feels natural, not forced. The best twists are the ones that change everything, but only when the audience is ready for it. And when it lands, it makes your story unforgettable. If you enjoyed these storytelling secrets, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more tips to improve your craft. Happy storytelling!